Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. The opposition in Zimbabwe has been so compromised. It really is playing a double game. Ever since the GNU, when they had the golden opportunity to implement the democratic reforms, and they failed to implement even one, they've participated in flawed processes, knowing fully well that the process is flawed, knowing fully well that by participating, they're giving the process legitimacy. It is interesting that in this Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3, some of us warned these opposition leaders that if you participate, you are giving the process legitimacy. The other day, the same individuals were admitting just as much. Here is the beginning of that interview.
We stood before you this morning following deeply disturbing developments in the ongoing public hearings on the proposed Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3. What we witnessed yesterday in Harare, and indeed in other parts of the country, cannot be described as a genuine consultative process. Citizens were denied the opportunity to speak, voices were drowned out, and in some instances, violence and intimidation were deployed against those expressing dissenting views, including on journalists, lawyers. This is not consultation. This is orchestration. A constitutional process that excludes citizens cannot claim legitimacy. Our position as the DCP, in consent with our colleagues in the CDF and in the National Constitutional Assembly, we have taken a principled decision. We hereby disengage from the current public hearing process. We cannot participate in or lend legitimacy to a process that is fundamentally flawed, exclusionary, and inconsistent.
Well. Ben, did you hear that?
Good day to you and good day to our viewers. Thank you for joining us. It's a little too late. I think the horse is already bolted, so it's done. You walked in, you went into this, public hearing. I mean, what did you expect? Zanu PF to welcome you in with open arms and to give you all guys the microphone and drown their agenda? So the answer is no. I mean, you cannot be hit with the same tactic over and over and over again and not learn anything. We've traveled down this road, and I think way before we even got to the consultation itself, we spoke about it, that there is nothing that will be free, fair there. Zanu PF will make sure they have their way or the highway. And I wasn't surprised with their tactics and how they handled the opposition. You cannot cry and say the people of Zimbabwe did not have a chance to speak, because right now people spoke. It is them that never spoke. But the fact that they were there means that everybody was present. The process included everybody, including attendance. So for me, I think it's a done deal. Zanu PF has won, that part to say, look, we did the process. Everybody was there. Was the opposition there? Yes, they were there. Did some people object? Yes, some people objected, but most people did accept it. That's what they wanted to show the world, and that's what the world will see.
I think what is really interesting with that interview or that clip is that the same individuals are now finally acknowledging that participating gives the process legitimacy. That is an acknowledgement that at the beginning they should have accepted. They have been told repeatedly, and we have quoted on this platform David Coulthard's book repeatedly, saying exactly that. If you participate, you give the process legitimacy. And here they are, finally acknowledging that their participation has given the process legitimacy. And in typical opposition style, they withdraw when the damage has already been done. The damage has been done. This is no different from what Chamisa was doing, telling the people of Zimbabwe that he has plugged all the vote rigging loopholes. Let's go and participate in the election. I've stopped Zanu PF rigging the elections. Then the day after the elections, he is the one who starts complaining and saying, oh, Zanu PF rigged the elections. Why did you participate? And so we find ourselves caught up in the same scenario again. They have participated, and now they want to pretend they can withdraw and no harm done. That's nonsense. But I would like to play towards the end of that interview, where they are now acknowledging that their withdrawal is only partial. I'd like to play it for the listeners out there.
I will ask Professor Maduku to respond to that.
It is very clear. We will demand a referendum. We don't take away a referendum merely because Zanu PF is threatening violence. I think there's a view I've heard people saying if they can rig the public consultation, they can also rig the referendum. They are not going to be able to rig the referendum. A referendum is a minimum, a non-negotiable aspect. We have said it. So we'll get a referendum, whether through the courts or through mere action by the people. And we want a referendum. I also have heard the view that Zanu PF actually thinks that this so-called consultation can substitute a referendum. And these are separate. What is under Section 141 and Section 328 of the Constitution, where Parliament must consult before it then seeks to determine. So that's different, the consultation. After Parliament is finished, then whatever it comes up with, if it then adopts the bill, it must go to the people. So a referendum is unavoidable. If, for example, they decide that they take it to the president before it is taken to the referendum, then even better, because we will challenge that. We will get a determination that says this is invalid because there's no referendum. Perhaps the court will give them an option to say we suspend that and then go to a referendum. So we are still demanding a referendum. I think Timber has made it very clear that disengagement in this case is just disengagement from these Zanu PF rallies. That's what we are disengaging. We are disengaging from Zanu PF rallies. But we then continue on a very broad debate, people's process, which will ensure that we stop this bill ever becoming the law of the country. So a referendum is unavoidable. Perhaps if he allows the chair that I should use this opportunity to make it clear that there's so many arguments which are coming across, legal arguments, so to speak, which say that a referendum is not necessary. Or even one which is very strange, which says that a referendum is prohibited by the Constitution. That one.
This is the reality we are facing here. We have a situation where the individuals, while they've said they've disengaged from the public hearing, they are turning around and saying, but we are still going to proceed and participate in the process. This is a repetition of the same mentality. Zanu PF knows that the opposition would participate in the election process, referendum process in this case, no matter what. Regardless how flawed the process become, they will participate. And they are doing so out of greed, period.
I think one thing that we need to realize is by now is whatever Zanu PF dishes to the opposition and to the people, they have already figured out ways of manipulating the outcome, be it by rigging, be it by, having flawed, elections, consultations, and probably they will have another flawed referendum. Because I believe, under normal conditions, even if you approach any court of law, they will tell you that there is everything wrong with this bill without having to go through the normal channels right up to a referendum. But Zanu PF will not just give you that referendum. They will have to fine-tune it in such a way that it will be impossible for their, resolution to fall or to falter. So whether we go for the referendum or not, I sincerely believe that referendum is a done deal. And I think Zanu PF know they will go through that. And again, it will be a story of Yatsika Mcheche Yam. You have participated in it. You cannot then go and cry. You now have to accept the outcome. And I believe a referendum where they're saying it cannot be rigged, that is a false promise. It is another false promise. They have been rigging, they've just rigged the consultation. What will stop them from rigging that referendum? They will rig it. And it's already in the works. I mean, they are campaigning, they are doing what Zanu PF normally does, where they hand out bicycles and so forth. They're already working on it. Now it's just to get the final paperwork on the actual day, and they will rig it. So I honestly do not believe what Professor Maduku is saying there to say they cannot rig the referendum. No, no, no. They will rig the referendum, and they can rig it.
Just want to remind the listeners out there that you can join us tomorrow. And if you use the link shown on the bottom of the screen there, you can join us and express your views as well. On Sunday, we'll have another discussion. This time, we will have the author, Divine Marfa, who has written a book on the referendum lie, in which he is exploring what is wrong with this whole amendment bill. And he will be our guest of honor on that Sunday discussion, starting 7 o'clock UK time, 8 o'clock Zimbabwean time. And you can join us on the StreamYard using the same link that is now being shown at the bottom of your screen. But to come back to the issue we were discussing here, Professor Maduku and his friends, what they are really saying here is they have only disengaged on the public hearing, but are otherwise fully engaged in this whole process. It beggars belief. The sheer irrationality of it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. If the public hearings were part and parcel of the process of this amendment, and they've proven to be so pathetic, because when what people saw happening is ridiculous. This has nothing to do with getting the honest opinion of the citizens. And they have decided, no, we are going to withdraw from that and then re-engage for the rest of it. It doesn't make any sense at all. This is an integral part of that process, and it has proven to be so meaningless. Why would you still want to participate? I'll tell you why. These opposition leaders have always wanted to participate. Ever since the GNU, the failed GNU of 2008 to 2013, the opposition leaders have made up their mind that they will participate in Zimbabwe's elections for a share of the gravy train seats. They have to justify to their supporters why they keep on participating. And they've come up with all these idiotic ideas to justify that. In the case of our friends here, they are insisting that the amendment will never go through. And yet we have seen again and again that their basis is not as solid as they want us to believe. Zanu PF is pushing through this amendment. They want the opposition to participate because that gives the process legitimacy. And the opposition are participating to give the process legitimacy. And they are conning the people into believing that their participation will stop the amendment, when in reality, it's clearly not doing that. Here is the Zanu PF Minister of Justice and Parliamentary Affairs explaining the next process in this amendment bill.
Is that we're going right around the country soliciting the views of the people, be it orally or in writing. We'll then come back to Parliament, sit as a committee, look at all the submissions that they received, and then come up with committee reports. The committee report that they prepared will then be presented in the National Assembly during the second reading speech after I presented the bill. So what will happen between now is, once the 90 days have lapsed, which is the week beginning the 18th of May, I will now be in a position to go and formally introduce the bill in the National Assembly and give a notice of presentation of the bill. Thereafter, I will then give my second reading speech. Basically, the second reading speech is when I formally unpack the bill in the National Assembly, explaining the rationale behind the bill, explaining the clauses, and then after that, I will move that the bill will be read the second time, opening up for debate in the National Assembly. That's when now the committee chairs will then present their committee reports about the consultations that they undertook and the recommendations pursuant to the public consultations.
From the public consultations, the people of Zimbabwe are particularly focused on the issue of the introducing a parliamentary method of electing the president. Some who are opposed to the bill have said that particularly the parliamentary method erodes the liberation struggle ethos of one man, one vote. Your take?
We have had an indirect election before. From 1980 to 1990, we didn't have direct presidential elections. So those that are arguing that by having an indirect election, we are eroding the gains of the liberation struggle, we are removing one man, one vote, are totally misplaced. In fact, the authors, those that gave us the idea of voting, in the majority of cases, they do not have a direct presidential election.
The issue of a referendum, clear that up. Is there a need for a national referendum on this bill?
Let me explain it by saying, in 2013, when we came up with a completely new constitution, we put in safeguards on how the constitution is supposed to be amended. And within that constitution, which we took to the people for a referendum, we were given 3 scenarios where we require a referendum. And the people clearly indicated that don't come to us if you are amending this constitution, if you are not touching these 3. Okay. What you simply need is 2/3 majority. So this amendment does not touch Chapter 4, does not touch Chapter 16, does not touch Section 328.
Justice Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Minister Honorable Ziyambi taking us through what are the next steps following the conclusion of the public consultations on the Constitutional Amendment number 3 bill.
What is next basically is
There we have it. The truth of the matter is, what Zanu PF is saying here is, what you say in the process is of no relevance. What Zanu PF wants you, the ordinary Zimbabweans, conned by the opposition to do is to participate. As long as you are seen to be participating, you are giving the process legitimacy. And let's be very clear here. Zanu PF already has 2/3 majority in parliament, thanks to the chaos that ensued in the 2023 elections. And let me make it very clear. Those elections, those people who participated in those elections, were doing it out of greed. They knew Zanu PF was rigging the election. They knew SADC and the AU election observers came out with their report and said the election process was flawed and illegal. And yet the same CCC opposition who were lucky enough to get their seats still went up and took up their seats. In other words, endorsing that they didn't care that the process was illegitimate. This is the reality. They gave this Zanu PF regime legitimacy. That is the truth. And the parliament that is there now is legitimate because the opposition insisted in participating in the flawed elections. The same opposition were insisting in participating in this clearly flawed amendment process. The people of Zimbabwe have got to wake up to the reality that they've got an opposition that says one thing and does the exact opposite. What Biti and company said in that interview showed you at the beginning here is one thing and then did the exact opposite. They said they are disengaging, and yet by the end of that same interview, they were telling the people of Zimbabwe that they are re-engaging. They are ignoring the public hearing as Zanu PF rallies, and yet taking up the process from there on. And I can tell you now, when the amendment is adopted, the same individuals will be crying foul that the process was illegitimate, but it will be too late. Ben, you have your final say.
I think if the opposition, if their final play card is a referendum, then I truly believe the whole mission is lost, because Zanu PF can and will rig that referendum. That is an obvious case. They have been rigging elections. Surely they cannot fail to rig a referendum, especially given that there's nobody that really will be observing. There won't be any observer missions there. And with the chaos that is present right now in Zimbabwe, it's much easier. So I think, participating will only give Zanu PF legitimacy and will give credit to the whole process, because you cannot complain because you have lost. That is what they have always used. You cannot complain because you have lost. And I think this is the card that they will use again and have their bill, passed through. The opposition, for me, has always insisted on this whole participation, knowing fully well that Zanu PF will rig, the whole process, or will have control, bias, you can choose whatever. But the mere fact is Zanu PF will get their way, even if it means through a referendum.
My final word on this issue is that the only way the people of Zimbabwe would have stopped this referendum going through is having the discipline to accept that the process is flawed. So flawed, so illegal, the only logical thing to do is to withdraw. They have been conned by the opposition into believing that, flawed and illegal as the process may be, the opposition can still win it. This has proven to be untrue again and again and again. This little cartoon, what is illustrating is actually the true reality of our present political situation, where Zanu PF thugs are using violence to make sure that this bill passes through. You've got to ask yourself, why are you beating up people if the amendment bill is serving the people's interest? They know that this bill is not serving the people's interest. It is only there to consolidate Zanu PF stranglehold on power. Zimbabwe is a de facto one-party state. Pass this amendment bill, it will push the country to becoming a de jure one-party state. Zanu PF will have power to do whatever it likes. Once you've allowed the president to extend his term of office by 2 years, you've opened the Pandora's box. What is there to stop him extending it another 3 years? Or some other future guy extending it for another 3 years? Parliament is now empowered to extend their own term of office from 5 years to 7 years. What is there to stop them extending it by another 5 years, another 2 years, 5 years? You have opened a Pandora's box. And wresting power from the regime has been difficult in the past. If this amendment bill is passed, it will be near impossible. That is the tragic reality of Zimbabwe. Thank you very much. Again, I remind those of you who would want to join us tomorrow to do so. And on Sunday particularly, we will have Divine Mafa explain his book. Thanks again to everybody. Have a good night.